My name is David Stoner. I'm the director of the FREEZE Network, or the Free Roaming Equid and Ecosystem Sustainability Group. This is part of USU Extension, housed here at Utah State University in Logan, Utah. The objective of our organization is to promote science-based approaches to natural resource management and serve as a clearinghouse for objective information on horses, wildlife, livestock, and range management. And I would also add social sciences related to the natural resources. Today, we are very honored and pleased to have Dr. John Madigan as our guest. He is going to talk about the well-being of domestic horses and his illustrious career in the veterinary sciences at UC Davis. Dr. Madigan is a distinguished professor emeritus and has been involved in many pursuits related to animal welfare and veterinary sciences in the equine sciences specifically. He is best known as the inventor of the Madigan squeeze procedure, which is a technique for treating neonatal maladjustment syndrome in foals, and perhaps he'll talk about that today. He developed specialized equipment for the rescue and care of large animals and spearheaded the creation of the UC Davis Anderson Sling, which is a tool used for supporting injured horses and other large animals during recovery and rehabilitation. Moreover, he has penned the seminal text, The Manual of Equine Neonatal Medicine, which is a standard resource for veterinarians, students, and equine caretakers. He has also been a trailblazer in disaster and emergency response for animals, and his efforts have shaped protocols for animal rescue during natural disasters. His leadership in this field underscores his lifelong commitment to the intersection of science and animal welfare and compassion. Throughout his career, Dr. Madigan has received numerous accolades for his contributions to veterinary medicine and animal welfare. His work embodies a deep dedication to advocacy, advancing knowledge, improving animal health, and promoting ethical practices in veterinary care. We are very pleased to have him here with us today. And should you have questions, please put them in the Q&A screen at the bottom of your screen, or questions in the Q&A. We also have the chat, and Jessica and I will be moderating questions at the end of the discussion today. So with that, Dr. Madigan, please proceed, and thank you for being with us today. We're very excited to hear what you have to say.
All right, David, thanks very much for having me, and Amanda and Jessica and Celeste that I've been interfacing with, so I really appreciate that. Okay, well, thanks again, David. So our topic today is really just to get to the little review of the biologic needs of horses and how that interfaces with our society. So that's our topic, and hopefully we will be able to all contribute a little bit. But my background is I've been around horses quite a bit. Early on, when I was 15, I was got a job on a guest ranch. I had to fudge about my age a little bit. But we took young people riding. In that top picture there's about 35 horses in line there, and they're going on an overnight with the horses in the 60s there. And that was in private practice, and ran into some infectious disease things that we did discovery on, ended up at the university. And my latest focus is some neonatal work in maladjustment. But I really enjoy the opportunity to be at the university. And then I was fortunate enough to get into the group, the American College Animal Welfare, where you can get together and discuss welfare topics. And basically, that's what your group, David, is doing. And that's really just very, very important. So veterinarians have a group where they get together too, and you have some focus in that area. So we're in the mix between people and animals. And it's a real challenge for veterinarians because you see all these different aspects to it, animals for food, companionship, protection, energy, wealth, prestige, and then in the people interface. And then for veterinarians, can we help out with preventative medicine, public health, zoonotic disease, disaster response, humane euthanasia, population control? client public education. So lots of overlap there, and a big challenge to try to do things to help the animals. So for the discussion today, I just thought I'd pull up some guidelines and then share those with the group, and we can discuss some of those, and then we'll merge into how this interfaces with the free roaming wild horse questions that come up. So I pulled up one of them is the California standards for horse care, California minimum standards of horse care, and they're guidelines, not legal requirements. And then another, and you can get that at the Center for Equine Health, and that's a free download. So that's a useful document to share, for people to, if they're more interested. Then there's also an equine sanctuary and rescue facility guidelines where we talk about subjects like end of life, where we get into that when we're talking about managing our horses and the biology of the care of horses. And so that is also available at the Center for Equine Health. It's called Equine Sanctuary and Rescue Facility Guidelines. And then recently I saw the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities, and that's a Australian and New Zealand group focus. They put together some minimum standards. So that's a good place to start with looking at some of these documents that have been put together. So before we, go too much further, I just wanted to make sure we defined guidelines versus legal requirements. So guidelines are best practices, and they're developed by professional organizations. The abbreviations there, the AAEP is American Association of Equine Practitioners, the AVMA, American Vet Med Association. Then we have for horses, UC Davis Center for Equine Health does a lot of that, and many, many others. But when they have guidelines, they represent recommended standards of care. And it's based on current science, ethics, and expert consensus. And it's important that these guidelines are voluntary, but reflect what high quality care should look like. But it does allow for flexibility for different environment, facilities, and resources. And I'll give you examples of those. But they're used in industry audits and animal care certification and welfare assessments and things like that. Then you get over to the legal requirements, minimum standards, if you will, and those are defined by state or law or local ordinances, and they establish the floor, not the ceiling. The guidelines that we have over here, kind of a highest level possible for optimal care. But these legal requirements is not the ceiling, but have a dog visiting if it sounds like someone's being beaten in the background. And you can give them a dog bone, Celeste, and that would be great. Sorry, but violations carry penalties, and they're much less flexible, and they often very reactive situations when we update after public pressure, where very bad things are happening to animals. So that's the difference between the legal requirements and the guidelines. So let's get into the definition of horse welfare and come from one source. I just pulled up this international federation. And horse welfare is the physical and mental state of a horse in relation to the condition in which it lives and dies. So that's a very important aspect to this whole thing. And then we'd say a horse is experiencing good welfare if it's in a healthy, comfortable, well-nourished, safe, and not suffering from unpleasant states such as pain, fear, and distress, and is able to express behaviors that are important for its physical and mental state. So that's a lot. And then continuing with definition from the IFHA, the International Federation for Horse Racing Authorities, the horse experiences a life worth living. That's an interesting concept that we can come back to at different times. Good horse welfare requires disease prevention and appropriate veterinary care, shelter, management, and nutrition, a stimulating and safe environment, humane handling, and when necessary, end of life, humane euthanasia. So I just pulled up some recent things that might help us in this discussion, and they come from David Meller, and he's at the Animal Welfare Science and Bioethics Center, and I met him in 2006 when I was doing a sabbatic leave and at Massey, and he and I started working on neonatal things because he was often looking at the welfare of the pregnant ewe and then the newborn animal, do they feel pain? And if so, when? And so we got into this consciousness thing. But I looked at his background, very, very active. He's a PhD and not a veterinarian, and he's not involved in practice. So he focuses on these uh, conceptual things and does a very good job of sharing that. So and again, if you see in this animals journal, which you can go to and get most of the time, those are free to download should you want to look at those in the animals journal. But you'll see in this, for the science part, this is labeled as opinion. So we'll get into that. It's in a journal that's considered a scientific journal. Shows up in PubMed when we review it, but this is an opinion-based effort. And so this is updating animal welfare thinking, looking at the five freedoms with expanding it to a life worth living concept. That was something he put together. So I know this is very small print, but this allows me to share in a nutshell this concept with you, if that's all right. So the simple summary from that animal publication is five freedoms, just a little background, were formulated in the early 1990s, are now recognized as highly influential in the animal welfare arena. However, a marked increase in scientific understanding over the last 2 decades shows that the five freedoms do not capture even specifics or genuality of their expression, the breadth and depth of current knowledge of the biologic processes that are germane to understanding. I'm going to ask you to just take to the most friendly dog in the neighborhood, who is not mine, who comes over for a visit, has just arrived because I just had my gate open. So the world of animals strikes at us during there. So sorry for that. So during the last couple of decades, there's been some questions come up. For example, the paper there refers to some negative experiences that can never be eliminated, merely temporarily neutralized because they are essential for eliciting behaviors upon which the survival of the animal depends. And he continues to write, in addition, it refers to other negative experiences that relate to animals' response to living in poor environmental conditions, which require improvement, and also how such experience may be replaced by positive ones when particular improvements are introduced. In other words, we do something, is it helpful? For animals to have lives worth living, and that's a concept that's out there and pretty commonly. It is necessary overall to minimize their negative experiences, at the same time provide the animals with opportunities to have positive experiences. These observations have implications for reviewing, potentially updating minimum standards in codes of welfare. The paper ends with an up-to-date characterization of the principal features of animal welfare. So anyway, that's something I just wanted to share with you that's new. So if we hold that thought about the five freedoms and making positive things and negative things, how does this fit in with the welfare of the free roaming horses? Because we want to take a look at that with regard to the focus here. So why standards matter? Horses rely on humans to meet biologic and behavioral needs. Society expects humane science-based care. So establishing standards protects horses and their caretakers. So it's really important as we put these standards together. So what are the five core needs? It's really it's very common sense, but important for us to review. Water. And then in these guidelines, they'll say clean, fresh, continuous access. And then we know in some circumstances, it's going to be intermittent access. And then we have to say, well, how dangerous is that or how bad? But I'll just comment on each one of these. Feed, balance, and nutrition. Well, in the free roaming horse, there's going to be seasonal changes that the nutrition is going to be really, really good in the spring with the grass growing and whatnot, and then not so good in the wintertime. So, but we say for our core needs, we want balanced nutrition the best we can, shelter, protection, and space. So when we have free roaming horses and domestic horses can take a bit of bad weather and some rain and some wind. But when it gets to freezing and it gets continuous and interrupts your ability to get feed and water, then we need more protection and space. Healthcare, veterinary and hoof care are really important. And then I think my friend Dr. Dick Mansman from North Carolina is on, and he's an expert on hoof care, and it's a really he's just championed the improvement in the horse welfare with programs focusing on hoof care, that one aspect alone. So we also have transport issues, safe and humane conditions, horses not packed in there so they don't fall down and things like that. Those are considered the five core needs, and you can see how much wiggle room we have in there. Horses require, with regard to water, 6 to 12 gallons per day, depending on the size of weather. Must have access at least twice daily, ideally continuously. These are coming from the guidelines. Water must be clean and containers safe. Well, we know horses have microbiota and drink out of creeks and everything, so we want to keep that in balance so we don't get penalized if the water is not look like a swimming pool in some cases. But clean water, meaning no pathogens. I'm much happier with a pathogen-free water and containers that are safe to get to. And if you don't do that, then you see you got California Penal Code showing up 597. I'll talk to you about that. That's the legal part. So feed and nutrition, and then a big concept here is the minimum body condition scoring, and that's a system in the U.S. that uses a scale 1 to 9, and in the UK and in Australia and other places, they use 1 to 5. And I have a couple more slides on that. But when we say minimum body condition, we refer to this thing called body condition score. So we'll go over that. But feed, well, we just measure it 1.5 to 3% of body weight per day. So if it's a 1,000 pound horse and it's 1.5% a body weight, and you split that up a couple times a day, you're throwing some hay out 7 to 8 pounds twice a day or more if the weather's bad or the hay's not good. Quality hay, free from mold and dust, is part of our guideline. And salt mineral supplementation, that's good. Mineralized salt blocker, the sodium chloride, the white one. So just a little bit more about body condition scoring. Evaluates fat cover at 6 body points. This is actually when you get in these legal things, you have to palpate the horse. You can't look over the fence and have a say that you've actually done the body condition scoring, but we can still use general guidelines. But if you want to do it right, you got to do this palpation. And the ideal score is said to be 5 to 7. I'll show you some pictures. And then less than 3 indicates, this is interesting, neglect and requires veterinary evaluation. Well, I've been into court a number of times with somebody who's got a 31-year-old horse, and the body condition each year, despite all the things you do, and is missing some teeth and whatnot. And just like old people if I use the term rest homes or whatever, kind of sarcopenia is just this metabolic loss of musculature. So it doesn't mean neglect, so here I am criticizing the slides I have up here, but these came from guidelines, and we should say less than 3 indicates neglect, old age, or severe veterinary conditions. And if a person wants to keep a horse, it's a 3 or 2, and they've had it for 30 years, we get into quite a discussion about that. And is it a life worth living? You see how that comes in. So body condition scoring tool for welfare education. So here they are. Poor condition is the 1. That's on the top left here. I got my little pointer. Then very thin, 2. Thin, 3. Moderately thin. Then 5, moderate. And then mostly moderately fleshy. Now that's like a politically correct term for a horse that's getting fat. But moderate fleshy. And then, okay, they use the word fat when it gets down to 8, and then extremely fat. And we know why some of this on the high side here of 6, 7, and 8 is that we have all this problem now with insulin resistance in horses. So just as much a concern if we have a horse that's too thin, one that's on the plus side, if I could use that term, we could get into some metabolic things. And then, okay, well, what's the problem with insulin resistance? Well, laminitis is one of the big problems, and it can be severe. So that's the body condition score, the 1 through 9. Okay. So then we have the one from the UK, and they go to the 5, and there's a 0 on the left. It's really skinny horse, and then a 1. So I guess they have I didn't know they had a 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 is the heavy horse. So what they point out in one of the papers, I just wanted to show this. This is a body condition score, and the lines there, depending on March, is or a certain time of year, you see it goes the body condition score. This is the 1 through 5 thing, or I should say 0 through 5. In the spring, it goes up, and in the wintertime, it goes down. So time of year may be a factor in what's a normal body condition score at there. So shelter and environment, horses need protection from weather and clean footing, according to the guidelines. And I would agree with that, but they can take some weather. Stalls large enough to stand, turn, and lie down. Well, and then how long are you in there? So we get into that. Proper ventilation, prevent ammonia buildup. And then we do have a time of a 15-hand horse. One of the guidelines says 12.5 by 12.5 foot stall. Well, if I just build a new barn and my stalls are 16 by 20, and they're only in there when something's wrong with them or they want to come in out of the rain. So I think more space is good myself. So I'm criticizing this, not criticizing. I'm commenting on the standards that we have. So shelter and environment. So we got that. Let's see. I just clicked myself out of something.
You're back.
I'm back. Oh, okay, that's good. Always good to be back. No, I don't know why. All right, Celeste, you're on duty. I'm pushing every arrow.
Stop pushing buttons.
Okay, stop.
There.
There we go. Oh, saved by Celeste. Thank you. Yeah. So healthcare, prompt veterinary attention for injury or illness. And those of you who have horses go, yeah, well, my vet's so hard to get and all that. So I won't comment on that, but we need more people going into equine practice so we can do these prompt veterinary attention things for injury or illness. Hoof trimming every 6 to 8 weeks. My colleague, Dr. Mansman, also suggests single lateral hoof radiograph once a year to see how that coffin bone and hoof thickness go, things like that. But we have hoof care, routine vaccination, dental and parasite control, humane euthanasia when suffering cannot be relieved. And there's a lot of factors that might go into that. Okay, now we're continuing. These are again guidelines. Transport standard. Horse must not be confined greater than 28 hours without rest, water, and feed. That's a long time. Safe ventilated vehicles with adequate height so the horses don't bump their head. And then horses that are non-ambulatory or late-term pregnant mares not transported, and stress reduced via ventilation and rest stops. I mean, lots of air moving and stop and get those horses out and move them around once in a while. So now we get into the human factor for these guidelines. And I find this, the top one there in red, to be very, very true. Neglect often results from ignorance, apathy, or hardship, and not as often overt cruelty. What does that mean to the horse? Nothing, because we could get him into a life not worth living because of ignorance or apathy. So education, like your group here is doing, and I think it's wonderful that you hold these, webinars and all different topics. But education then can end up preventing suffering and promote responsibility. And then law enforcement veterinarians play key roles. When we get into a real dicey situation as a veterinarian and we see that something's really not humane, a lot of suffering, no way out of it, and there's a disagreement about that, often from ignorance or apathy or hardship or the person out there. Then our animal services group plays a big role in helping because they have legal authority to make some changes that might be really in the best interest of the horse. So intersection with society. Here we go. That's what we're on. And, we know that I've got my part of my slide covered, so I'll move you around. Welfare standards reflect cultural ethics and compassion. Society, science, and law converge to protect horses. Humane care strengthens the human-horse bond. That term, human-animal bond, actually, when I was in vet school, Leo Bustad, who was a dean at the vet school for a while, and he was a radiologist, he coined that phrase to indicate the magnitude of the connection, and that's the human-animal bond. And I'm going to show that as it comes in because you don't have to own a horse to have a human-animal bond connection with horses or the human-horse bond. And I think this is really central to our discussion here because you may not know the name of that horse that you see out in the field or wild horses in a group or what have you, but you may have some connection that you feel with that horse. And that's important to know. That's real and it's there. And so I want to emphasize that. So guess what? I'm reading something in Science magazine, and it's not one that I read regularly, but it's a very high quality. And it says here, and this from 2013, still going on, it is up to society to decide how they want their government to manage wild horses and how many wild horses should be accommodated on public lands, what should be done with excess horses, and how much they're willing to spend. Well, guess what? It doesn't say that these animal welfare experts or these groups like yours with knowledge and compassion and expertise are going to, determine the management. It says it's up to society. So let's get into that a little bit because that's a big factor. So how does society learn about horses? Well, I can tell you a lot of people never are the same with regard, it releases an expression of a connection that is there. And Black Beauty. What were the themes in Black Beauty? Animal welfare and kindness to animals, the importance of empathy and compassion, identifying social injustice and mistreatment, the value of perseverance through hardship, the bond between humans and animals, the consequences of ignorance and cruelty, and of course, the power of storytelling to inspire change. I'll tell you what, that bottom line there is you can put up a whole bunch of data, you can do things. And when I do, I'm just going to comment on this because I think it's important for those that are, those of us in your group that are looking at this is that when I do disaster medicine and we don't have any money and we get a whole bunch of animals coming in, so I tell a story about one of the animals that we're caring for. I don't answer the press's question when they say, how many animals did you rescue today, Dr. Menigan? How many are in the shelter? I tell them about one animal and show them. And I got to tell you, the funds start coming in. And why? Because it connects with this human-animal bond. And people say, well, what we do with the money is not use it ourselves. It pays. So when any animal came to our hospital, the owner never had to spend a nickel because their house just burned down and they didn't have it. Nor did the university have to come up with it because we use storytelling to inspire change. So I want to make a big point about that. Well, how else does society learn about things? I'm just rereading Seabiscuit, and written by Laura Hildebrand, and the movie is just fabulous, in my opinion. And then Secretariat, oh my gosh, the book and the whole thing, and the Black Stallion, my daughter's favorite movie. And so we have a group of the public. Let's just look at this society impact, and that's the Kentucky Derby in May. Oh, the Kentucky Derby, hours and hours on television. The stands are full, and watching this and cheering them. And so you have that connection with people. They enjoy that aspect of it. And then we have the thing where HBO has canceled this series on horse races because a horse died at one of the tracks. A third horse died. I don't remember which track was involved with that. So, there's two opposite ends of that image about and feeling about horses and racing. So here are some of the things we talk about and teach veterinary students. I thought I'd just tell you, um, we're veterinarians, we're in the middle of that animal welfare slide, right? And so much to learn, so many different species, and not all the time that we'd always love to have. So how do we do it? I'll just give you what we do. So we had a 1 hour or 2 hour lecture on these three topics to the entire sophomore class. They have to take this core material. We covered the unwanted horse, introduction to BLM horse issues, and horse slaughter. And you could say, well, I thought that would be a 16-week, 3 hours a week course. And it could be, but it's not. And for the reasons that I mentioned. So just to show you what the learning objectives were, compare and contrast lists recall societal factors which have contributed to the non-horse owning public awareness of the horse. In other words, becoming aware of how people formulate their opinions. Thanks, Les. List and explain, analyze a given situation. So we give them an animal welfare issue and identify, explain the economics, biologic aspects of horse care. Examine the issues associated with the care and well-being of owned and unowned horses, as well as the numbers associated with death. So that's very important. Then continuing, recall the very basic aspects of BLM wild horse program and the current controversies. Oh gosh, yeah. Did we get 15, 20 minutes on that to cover? You know, uh, I'm not belittling our curriculum. I'm just showing you that it's a very much of an introduction. Acquire a historical perspective of how horse numbers and horse care have changed in the USA as a result of where horses fit into prevailing culture. That's ongoing. And consider the similarities and differences between welfare issues in horses and those in other domestic animals. So, what's the problem? These are three horses that I have on Potter Valley, had. They're all retired, and they're getting along pretty good. And because I had a really simplified situation there that I could manage myself. But what's the problem? Well, here's what the Washington Post had to say in 2013. The West is on the brink of a wild horse apocalypse. No, really. Then we have these things that show up on the news. And then we say, well, the horses, there are too many there, so we're going to take them off. What do we do with them? We put them into feedlots like this. A huge part of the budget. I'm not an expert on this at all, but I can just relay that we let the students know about that. And maybe that's good welfare. Then we have babies being born there, and they're not exactly grazing, but people are doing the best they can with their circumstances and guidelines for these management things. So with the unwanted horse, just touch on that. Back in 2013, we really started addressing that. Not me, but Tom Lenz and others in the AEP did a great job of going around and explaining things. But over 100,000 horses were leaving the U.S. I don't know currently what's going on with that with regard to the actual data for Mexico and Canada for horse slaughter and meat to Europe. Economic factors, horses being abandoned by owners, neglect, starvation was rising. Horses which are healthy were being euthanized for economic reasons. And then it's illegal to sell horse and might go to slaughter in some states, and no slaughter plants are operational in the U.S. And so horses, they look like they're stacked in there a little tight. How long are they in there? These are all big welfare concerns, growing across the border, and all that. And then horses, just some were loose, uh, and those look like pretty nice horses just visually there, but horses were getting abandoned. And then when the economics are bad, or there's too many horses per ability for the natural environment to supply it, we have this horrible starvation situation. And of course, that's why we have these guidelines that that are tough. But this is tough too, and that's a horse with a very low body condition score. And then I want you to take a look at the marks on the horse, and where those come from are other horses running that horse off. So you have this competitive thing for feed, and a stronger, more dominant horse will run this horse off. So there may be a horse with a higher body condition score in with a thin horse. And this thin horse then needs to be removed because of the competition. It may be just feed management and not a lack of feed, but putting feed in one spot, and then this horse can't get to it. And then when do we involve euthanasia? We really spent a lot of time on that. Dr. Allman, neurologist, we developed a humane and no carcass contamination field euthanasia method with anesthetizing the horse with xylosine ketamine, and then using intrathecal lidocaine, which didn't result in contamination. And because Dr. Allman's a neurologist, we have brainwaves, so the horses felt nothing. Then they were anesthetized, no pain, and the brain waves immediately stopped. And when you give penobarb, just throw this out because I know some people that when we talk about this to groups, we find out that this is sometimes this end of life at a horse where you give the concentrated penobarb, the horse is standing. You give the second syringe full, usually it's 100 cc's of this, and the horse just drops. And then sometimes you see movement. So we studied that, and we saw that by the time the horse was on its way down from the first dose, the brainwave was flat. And any movement we saw was actually spinal motor, no sensory perception. So sometimes you see that in the horse gas and you think, oh my gosh, the horse is feeling something. Well, that initial 60 cc's flatline in the brainwave, and the heartbeat is still going because that's autonomic. But what we care about for end of life humanely is the brain is stopped. So that's good. And there's many California 1998 ban the possession, transfer, receipt, holding any horse, pony, or burro or mule with the intent to have it slaughtered for human consumption. So politics get involved. Who wants to be in favor of killing horse for dinner, horse slaughter? Then just finishing up here with this, and then we'll take some questions and whatnot, is this is from the Animals Journal, and it's that group in New Zealand, Andrea Harvey and then David Mellor there, mental experiences in wild animals. And then they're writing this, it's a review, scientifically validating measurable welfare indicators in free roaming horses. So this is getting into the science that then can lead to things. And the simple summary says the mental experienced animals are what characterizes their welfare status, the mental aspects. The review refers to indicators or physical functions in domains 1 through 5. So if you haven't heard of the 5 domains, I'll go over that. And they link them to this domain 5, which is this, okay, here we go. Okay, still going forward. So what's the 5 domains model for animal welfare? Is a contemporary, holistic framework for assessing animal welfare based on the understanding that physical and mental states are linked and involves nutrition, physical environment, health, behavioral interactions, mental state. And the anticipated negative or positive mental experiences of 1 through 4 are then lumped together under this domain 5, which is the mental state. So I'm going to blow this up and then I can go over each one of these. So here's the physical domain Physical function domains. Domain 1, nutrition, hydration. And they list the challenges. Restricted food water intake, low food quality. Opportunities, sufficient good water, good quality food water, varied and preferred tastes, smells, and textures they elaborate on. Domain 2, physical environment. So the challenge is extreme heat or cold, other extreme weather conditions, lack of shade or shelter. Then there's things you can do about that: thermal comfort, presence of shelter, water, shade. Then we go into health: acute or chronic injury, ill health, poor fitness, weakness. Opportunities are prevent injury by having, things that are safe, good health, good physical fitness. Then domain 4, behavior interactions, social isolation, limit the challenges, getting ahead of myself, for behavior interactions, domain 4, the challenges for that particular domain are social isolation. Horses like to be in groups or with a buddy. Limited positive social interaction, challenging or predatory threats, anthropogenic disturbance, competition of resource. So the horses running each other off trying to eat. So they put this down here, and it goes into this. This all flows into domain 5, the mental state. And the negative is thirst, hunger, breathlessness, thermal discomfort, weakness, sickness, exhaustion, frustration, loneliness, isolation, lack of control, security, anxiety, fear, and pain. Wow, that's a lot. The positive is trying to have a rewarding engagement with exploration and foraging, pleasures of variation in taste, smells, and texture of food, gastrointestinal comfort, postprandial satiety, thermal and physical comfort, vitality of fitness, maternally rewarded, affectionately sociable, playful, sexual gratification, calm, content, rewards of exercising, choice, and a sense of control and security. Man, that's a lot. I mean, that sounds like a children's camp for very rich kids to me, But that all fills into animal welfare. That last one, I'm not sure I got that going in my house. I thought they had it pretty good here, but we may not have all that. All right, I'm moving forward with getting to the last slide here, but where did oh yeah, it's hidden. Okay, thank you. Okay, conclusions. Yay. Horses' biologic needs are non-negotiable. The very core biologic ones that we mentioned. Society shares moral and legal responsibility. Yep. Welfare science ensures ethical stewardship of horses. So, welfare science asks, is the horse thriving? Guidelines ask, are we following the best practices? And laws ask, is this minimally acceptable or is it criminal? So I just that's my little bit of a summary. The picture I decided to going through things here when Celeste asked me. That's two of our retired horses are in Potter Valley. I used to hit the polo ball around a little bit, and when the horse just got a little bit older and it wasn't optimal, I had this nice pasture with some friends there in Potter Valley, and when we go to feed them and trim them, you can't help but go for a little halter bareback ride on these wild critters and do that. But I found an animal welfare thing, and I modified it a little bit because everybody likes to have their own definition. But here's one. Animal welfare involves preventing suffering and promoting well-being, not only for the animals themselves, but for the people who depend on them, care for them, look out for them, that's your group, or interact with them. You may do all these other things, but I know your group is trying to look out for horses in different environments, including the wild horse or the free roaming horse. So that's the definition that I had there. And then I'm happy to have any commentary or questions and stop the sharing. And here we go.
I thank you so much, Dr. Madigan, for your informative presentation. I know that sometimes, even being a former horse owner myself, sometimes I look at your list of of those 5 basic principles, and I think, oh, I don't know if my horse has had all those at all times either. But as we're kind of thinking about how to transition that between domestic and free roaming populations, what are some of the kind of take homes that we can cross over into that, or what portions of this might be applicable in the free roaming horse world?
Okay. Well, I think we'd go back to those, the first slide of the core, biologic needs in the real basic ones, some water, access to water, and then you have to go, well, how much or how often and whatnot, but start to address that. And then look at, do we have enough nutrition to allow the horse to move freely and undergo seasonal weight loss? Okay, but not too much. And then, things of that nature. And do we have the ability to look at other factors where we could expand the access to the feed when we need to? Could we, change the area, allow the horses to move, actually interfere with their, this is where they are, and then the feed's not good, and then you're not supposed to move them, but down the road a ways you could. I'm a real practical person, so I'd be looking at food, water, and horses are living in that environment usually can survive. And then I think what we'd have to realize is it's not going to be perfect. We're going to see things that we would address with our domestic horse that we can't do anything about. Like if I haven't gone on a safari or anything, but if I saw, they have all these films of the animal predator getting an animal, that's just, hard to watch for me. And so we're going to know that when we have the free roaming horse, it's not the same as a domestic horse, what they're going to experience. And that's part of living in the wild. And you're going to sometimes have it tough, and sometimes you're going to die tough. And if you're not ready for that, then that's evolutionary biology taking forward there. And I think education about that be helpful. But as much space as they can have, and preventing the competition, that not to get into what animals are on there, but is it okay to drop feed? Do we interface with that, or do we have such a guideline like wilderness? You can't do this or that. Well, if somebody broke their neck, they can still land a helicopter under there in circumstances. So maybe we should have some things like that for those horses when it's really bad. We should be, bringing some stuff in to help them just get over the edge. That's just my personal feeling, because I don't like seeing the adverse consequences of even, a real rough season or a real bad set of winter storms, et cetera. So I don't have a good answer, but I would go back to the minimum core biologic basis and then realize we're going to see some stuff that we wouldn't have for our domestic horse. We'd fix that leg that's got a cut on it, or the horse is limping.
Yeah.
We'd figure it out and get him on some pain stuff. And if he can't lay down and get up, then we call the vet and humanely put him down. That horse out there, he dies the hard way. That's hard. I don't like it myself.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think any of us,
you
I
know,
don't think any of us here would like to see animals suffer at all.
yeah, I get off the tour bus when we start getting into that territory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I,
Well, are there any, go ahead.
well, I'd like to follow up on that. I think it's a fantastic discussion point because the horse really has this unique place in our collective psyche, and I really appreciate the introduction to the literature on animal welfare and ethics. And I guess to continue with that theme, I'd like to ask, is it reasonable to extend the standards of care for a domestic animal onto wild horses or wildlife? And maybe said another way, are there a set of evolving ethics in terms of society's approach towards wildlife, animals that, regardless of whether they're feral or truly wild animals, and how, as you just said, there's the food, the water, but some of these other things, the life worth living. How do we reconcile these concepts between our domestic animals and our native wildlife?
Yeah, great point, David. And because I think that our society is evolving to have more awareness of the connection of animals with people. And you don't have to own a horse. We talked about that a little bit earlier. You've got a feeling about horses. I know that from just our visit and whatnot, and why you spend time doing things. And so I think society, when they're deciding what's going to happen with the animals, and I think there's more people in society that say we'd like to minimize some of the natural occurring suffering that's occurring on these horses that are now, they're called free roaming, but they're locked into some spaces that we've decided, like a reservation. And sometimes you've got to make a you know an inroad in there or modify this. We don't do anything. I mean, I swear to God, if they had a deal where they voted that you could have people surveying stuff, not hurting horses, and you find some horses stuck and down, hasn't died yet, landing and doing humane end of life right there by doing that, I'd be in that group.
Yeah, it's interesting because I work with a lot of wildlife managers, and following drought or really stressful conditions, one of the interventions that they implement are increased hunts, knowing that the range is stressed or there's going to be natural die-off related to conditions, and I'm just thinking somewhere we need to reconcile these
Yeah,
perspectives of our love for the individual animal, the pet or
yeah,
the companion animal, with our love for wild animals that we don't necessarily have a personal relationship with.
yeah. Yeah, it's a really great point, and I think it's evolving. I think this awareness about some of this stuff is evolving, and part of it is the video camera. Part of it's the iPhone experience. You see something, and to go back to how much influence that has when we would be bringing animals in from, we'd be go through the roadblocks and the clinic would be closed. There's no power, electricity, and they're taking care of animals. Can you bring these back to Davis? Yep. And we go into the place and into our clinic, and I said, get a picture of this cat and put it on there. And once people had the awareness visually that that animal needed care, then they said, hell yes, I'll do it. You can't just say, I only need 100,000 horses on this amount of acres. That just doesn't do it. You got to say, what's the consequences, and then show it, in my opinion. If you show it, it makes all the difference in the world. And then you have to just, if you get involved with this, it can be overwhelming. So we have veterinary students that have really high um, not liking life problems because it's too big. It's too much for them to handle, and they can't make their individual influences. And I wouldn't do the disaster stuff if I couldn't be in charge of what we were going to do, and I wouldn't do it. And then we'd have to just each time, like if you have 1,400 sheep and you're deciding what you're going to do. And we ended up being there 42 days because we couldn't figure out each day what to do with all those animals. We had to look the next day, things like that. So we have to have a sense, society, if they could see that they had caring, good people making decisions, bring some feed in, go do this, go do that, bring some water in, dig a well, or what have you, I think they'd go for it. And if they're, if the intention was helping make a life worth living.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. Well, with that, do we have any more questions from our audience? Okay, if not, I'm going to close. I'm going to thank you, Dr. Madigan, for your wonderful presentation. This is really fantastic, and I think really cuts to the heart of a lot of these issues around wild horses. For those of you that want to tune in next month, December 17th, we will have Dr. Catherine Schenecker joining us to talk about domestication of horses and how those traits have influenced their life history in wild settings. So that is going to be a fantastic talk. Again, our thanks to our speaker today, and we hope to see you next month.